what's going on, everybody? You're tuning into another episode of 20 Minutes. I am your host, Tim McCarthy. Today we have on soccer player or pro footballer who has numerous accolades such as MVP for the under-23 U.S. Women's National Soccer Team and is now training to be a mental health counselor. Stephanie Ochs, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Not many people ask me that, so I do appreciate it.
I'm a counselor. This is what we do.
Perfect. Let's start with your career first. Let's do a deep dive in what you're up to now after that. So, how did you first get into soccer?
Um, it's actually kind of cool. It was from watching the 1999 Women's World Cup. I don't know if it was like, seeing that representation on the TV. I saw it and I was like, wow, that looks like a lot of fun. And I was in a place where I was looking for a sport to play, and it literally happened like that. Like, there's no soccer in my family, like no one's ever played, and I literally just saw it and I was like, well, that looks fun. And then I started playing and just absolutely fell in love with it.
Now, do you call it soccer or football?
Honestly, both. Kind of depends on where I am, but yeah, depends on who you ask and where you are. Some people will say soccer, some will say football,
So,
but
people that say the football, what do they call actual football in America? They just call it American football?
American football, I've heard some funny ones like people used to call it like hand egg because that's like more appropriate.
I love a good hand egg
um,
game.
I know it sounds so funny, but yeah, they'll say American football.
How did it feel knowing that you were good enough to play college pro and then winning the MVP in something like that game? How did it make you feel?
It's funny asking like a therapist that question. Um, I, you know, I don't know if I ever felt, took that moment to be like, hey, I'm good enough to do all this stuff. I was always this person who was kind of like, it's not good enough. I need more, and very, very hard on myself. So I don't know if I ever even had that moment where I was like, wow, I'm good enough. It was like, you're always chasing. That's kind of how I always felt. I was always chasing, like, no, I need to be better, like, okay, I made it to the professional team. Now I need to be doing this, and it was always like pushing for the next thing. But I think in general, overall, like now when I look back, it feels really good to know that I got to do something that I love doing. I think that's more of like what resonates with me is that that's what I would reflect on a lot is, wow, this is something I really love and I get to do it every day, but it was that constant chase of like wanting to get better and better.
I feel like everybody has a story behind their number. What is your story behind yours?
Behind what?
Your number, your player number.
Oh, the number. I I don't have a good story, which is I'm sorry.
You just picked a random one.
um,
You're like, ah, that will do.
yeah. No, in college I was given the number 22, and I literally like I was like, okay, as a freshman, I kind of had to take whatever I was given. And then it just stuck with me. Like, I don't know. And then after that, and that's what I don't know why, like I kind of tried to stay with it. And for the most part, I think I kept it for the most part on every team. Trying to think if there were any other ones, but I don't know. It's weird how like it matters. You know what I mean? Like it shouldn't matter, but like why did I try to keep getting the same number? It's almost part of like your identity, which is kind of funny to say.
You're very humble with your career, so you're all about the name on the front rather than the number on the back, which I like.
Yeah.
Now, what does mental health mean to you, by the way?
Oh, I mean, mental health is everything. Like to me, I think it's so hard to describe because it is everything. Like it's so important. It's how we see the world, like how we feel every day, how we interpret things. Like I don't know. And I think what's interesting is that people will give you different answers, like
Yep.
a lot of people will say, oh, mental health is like self-care. Like that's been like such a buzzword lately is like self-care, self-care. But I think mental health isn't like this divided thing on its own. It's how we feel every single day. And I think the more we get comfortable with that, like the more we'll pay attention to it. It's not I also have this feeling, and I don't know if you've felt this way too, that like when people talk about mental health, it's only reserved for like, oh, only for those people who suffer with depression or anxiety or like have a diagnosis, but we all have mental health to focus on. It's as important. And you're obviously talking to a counselor, so I'm so biased, but it's as important as our physical health, all these things that, we pay somewhat attention to, and I think it should just be incorporated into everything as opposed to like this separate entity of like, oh, you only talk about mental health when you're struggling with it. No, you talk about mental health every day because it's in everything we do and again how we feel every day.
There's no wrong answer for that. There's a million
Yeah,
different answers, and I like that one a lot. And there is a big difference because there is mental health, which we all have, and then there's people with mental illnesses.
right.
So that's
Yeah.
great. Um, did you ever have like anxiety playing? I think we talked about that. How was it with playing like sports anxiety?
Yeah. What's interesting is so I did my undergrad in psychology too. And what's interesting is like I had been studying it. I didn't do my master's until after I finished playing. What's interesting is I didn't understand that I had anxiety the whole time, like until after, which is funny because you would think like you're studying it, like you would have an idea of like, oh wow, this sounds really familiar. I don't know. In studying it, I kind of was like, huh, like I feel like I identify with some of that, but I never could label myself as having anxiety. And I think maybe that speaks to where I was at in like my own journey in addressing it. Um, but when I look back now, I see that it was laced throughout my whole career, like in so many ways. Like, but I think what's weird about things that we deal with internally is that we don't realize something is, I don't want to say like wrong, but like you don't realize necessarily that it's not quote unquote normal. You're kind of just used to it. And you're like, oh, this must be how everyone thinks. Or like, or you think, oh, this is just how I am and I have to get used to it, but it affected me a lot. Like it affected my playing. It affected how I dealt with things like with failure, with mistakes. I think my anxiety would just eat me alive because I would beat myself up and just be ruminating after thinking of, which a lot of athletes tend to do, but it was like to the point where it's very excessive, to the point where then I would go out to training the next day and be consumed with anxiety, like, and it would start affecting my performance. And so I would always try to, I was trying everything. I was like, oh, I need to meditate. I need to do this. I need to do that. But it wasn't until after I like officially retired that when I started my master's, I was like, dang, that really took a toll, but
Yeah.
I didn't realize it.
How does anxiety feel for you? Because for me, it's like I just want to rip my skin off. Like I just want to scrape it
Yeah.
off, and like sometimes my stomach hurts. How is it for you?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like, where do I start? It's the heart racing, like sweating a lot. I mean, it's like the textbook, like anxiety,
Yeah.
like what you will see when you look up the definition. Oh my gosh, it just like I think I noticed it a lot too. Even after I was playing, when I was going into the world of mental health, because it was such a new career for me, it brought up a lot of anxiety because I was like, I'm very new at this. Like, whereas with soccer, it was like, that's my comfort zone. Like, I've been doing it for so long, but this was something totally new. And I was like, oh gosh, I'm like getting anxiety talking about it. I would like feel it's the heart
double
rate.
double
I know.
anxiety.
Yeah. The overthinking I think is probably the worst for me. Like the after, even before I'm planning, like what am I gonna do? What am I gonna say? I want to make sure I say the right thing. And then after it was like it'll be like, oh, I can't believe I said this. Like that person probably thinks this and this and this of me. Um, and just so excessive to the point where it just like consumes, and I could see what you're talking about, like that feeling of like you almost want to get out of your own skin because it's so much, but yeah.
start like stuttering and stuff. I'm the same. I'm like, I get a whole slew of them. Anxiety. Isn't it great?
Isn't it great? Yeah, it's well, it's interesting. Sorry to like go off on a tangent, but
No,
I
it's
think
perfect.
I I recently started doing therapy, and what's interesting is I was talking to my therapist about how anxiety almost like kind of made me a better soccer player, which sounds weird, but like it comes from this deeper place of wanting to kind of prove myself and trying to earn this feeling. I mean, I don't want to go too much, but trying
No,
to earn this
please.
feeling of being kind of being loved and valued for something, and so that kind of drove me to work so hard at playing soccer and being the best I could be. So it's kind of weird because I look at anxiety, I'm like, it oddly helped me in a way, but there was a point where it just became too much, and it was kind of past that threshold where it was like a healthy amount of drive. You know what I mean?
It makes sense because anxiety is an internal battle and you want to win that battle.
Yeah.
How was it being an athlete, and did you have thick skin? Like, what was like some of the things people would say to you in the crowd? Did you ever have to deal with that?
Oh yeah. I'm like, so I just deal with things, as you could probably see. I'll start just laughing. I'm like, that's funny. And then later I'll think about it. I'm like, actually hurt my feelings. And I laugh. That's literally, I mean, that's just how it's a
Yeah, you
coping
have to.
mechanism. Um, but yeah, I don't know. At the time, like when I was playing, if someone would say something, it would kind of depend on the game if I was doing well. And this is so like speaks to the anxiety. Like if I was doing well that day, I was feeling better about myself and it didn't matter as much. Whereas if I wasn't doing as well, that's when anxiety starts getting worse and you start kind of, the cycle of thought starts going. So it would kind of depend on the day. But if usually I would be able to be like, oh, that's funny. Like, and it wasn't terrible stuff. Like I've heard some games where, and some like, especially in Europe and other places, like they'll say some pretty intense stuff, but I don't think I've ever had to deal with it like to that extreme. Like,
Right.
yeah, I don't know.
People forget that athletes and like famous people and actors, actresses are like human beings as well.
No,
Like, oh,
robots.
you kick a ball, so I'm going to scream terrible things at you.
Hmm.
Now, you're talking about being a counselor. Why did you want to get involved with mental health?
Um, I've been asked that question a lot, like going through like when you apply to get your master's and then after when I started working, and I still don't know if I have a good answer, like because I really have just been like from a young age, just like intrigued by humans. Like I'm just so curious about like why we are the way we are, like why we do the things we do. And that's kind of where it started. And then I don't know, I think there's so many factors that go into it, but I've always enjoyed helping people. And I think this is a really incredible way for me to do that, and I think, in choosing like a career, it's so hard because you can just do any like a random thing and it might not make you that happy, but if you can find something that you really love and that you have some like skill set or some ability in, and I think I hit that sweet spot with mental health, working with mental health. I don't know, and I don't know like kind of what, I think there's so many factors that drove me to that, like my own stuff, like so many things, but I can say like since I started doing it, I was, it's obviously really hard. There's really difficult moments, but it kind of similar to like playing soccer. I wanted to find something that I enjoy doing every day. It's so cheesy to say that, but it's like, I don't know, I can't imagine living any other way. And I think play gave me that, is that feeling of waking up every day and feeling excited to go do what you want to do. Um, so I don't know. I think I already knew I wanted to do something with psychology or something, and then I don't even know what made me be like, "Hey, I want to be a therapist," you know? Maybe it was like always being that person anyway, to all my friends and all my family, like always being that person. So I was like, maybe I could do this. Like, we'll see, and I started it and was like, wow, this is fun.
You already pretty much answered my next two questions, but I'm gonna ask them anyway. How are you with working under pressure?
Oh, it depends. Depends on a lot of different things, and it's a good question to ask when someone who's battle with anxiety, because pressure can do a lot. It's interesting to look back on like playing soccer in front of like huge crowds. Like you think, oh, there's so much pressure that goes into it, but I've felt more nervous doing like therapy than doing that, and I think that's more a testament to like you put so many hours into playing that like you get to the point where you don't have to think anymore necessarily about like what your next move is, how to pass a ball, how to do like these very simple things because it's just so muscle memory like ingrained into you. So I've never felt more pressure than when I started doing therapy because and the clients that I was working with, I was working with clients who've dealt with trauma. So I was like, oh my gosh, what if I say the wrong thing, and I really had to go into it and I mean, so much anxiety, but I just had to kind of like a lot of things, like once you start doing it, you start feeling better little by little, because you're getting more comfortable and you start believing in your own ability a bit more. And that's what I had to do was like trust that as a human, I could handle the situation no matter what, like even if it got really bad, like and luckily I've I've been okay, but
Mhm.
I don't know, like, I think people don't realize like when you're in so I mean I was working with clients who have dealt with primarily like sexual trauma. So it was very intense. And I've talked with a lot of people who were suicidal at that moment, like trying to talk them down from it. And it's like that's like the most high pressure situation I can think of, and I think I really had to it wasn't as much about like, okay, here's the textbook thing to do. It was
Right.
like be a human and connect with them. And I had to rely on my ability to do that. And that was so scary, but like so rewarding. And I'm so glad that I've been able to do that. But I don't know. I've definitely been in some very high pressure
Right.
situations. I don't know. It's been a lot.
The therapist I've got along with, and they all had a good personality. Like I
Mhm,
knew that they were like being real, and opposed to
mhm.
like some of them that literally probably were reading right from the textbook, and I was just like, yeah,
Yeah.
this isn't gonna work.
Hmm.
Where are you
Yeah.
right now in your journey? Are you a full licensed counselor therapist, or are you still working through that?
No, I'm still working towards it. So you finish your degree and then you start earning hours, and it's just kind of that journey. And you once you at least in California, it's different in every state. Um, so we finish a certain amount of hours and we take a test, and then once you pass the test, then you become licensed. So
Did you want to focus on one like mental illness, or were you gonna tackle a bunch of them?
um, I'm still figuring that out, to be honest. I've noticed that you know, the clients that have anxiety, like it's really easy for me to connect with them, but you also like as a therapist, like you can't really use that too much, because your own experience can kind of give you that bias of like, oh, well, they must be experiencing it the same way that I did, but I don't know. That's just what I found is that because I've had experience with anxiety, they can kind of start describing it, and I'm like, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, I know exactly the feeling. Um, but that's the challenge is that you can know the symptom, but it might resonate different with each person. So I don't know. I I don't know. I'm interested in doing something with sports too, obviously, because that's so much of my background and my heart and soul. So I don't know. I think ideally in the future, I'd love to do something, maybe with athletes, and I don't know. We'll
It's right up
see.
your alley.
Right up my alley.
Yeah,
Yep.
right up your alley. What are some things that you learned along your way that just straight up surprised you? You're like, whoa.
Along like the mental health.
Yeah. Is there any one thing that you're like,
Oh,
oh, this mental illness, I was like, oh, I didn't know that, or you learned something, or if you
I
know
mean,
like any
there's so much.
stigmas too.
There's so much. I think one of the things I knew about trauma, but I didn't fully understand it until I started working with it and learning about different modalities to treat people who've dealt with trauma. And I mean, trauma can be a lot of different things. It's not just this like, you were abused as a child. It's this very extreme situation, which most of my clients that was the case. But I mean, that I think that was what was so fascinating to me is how our body and our brain responds to it and deals with it and hold on to it. Like it. I think that was so shocking is how long our brain holds on to it. And there's this like famous book, The Body Keeps the Score, that is about trauma that goes in depth into it. But it's incredible like how like sophisticated our brains are, but how like damaging that can be because it holds on to it for so long. It's like people like to think, oh, you know what, that happened in my childhood, I forgot about it. But until like usually until you really address a lot of it, like it's still kind of sitting in there and affecting a lot of things. And there's so much brain chemistry that goes into that, and is I don't know, learning about that, I was like, wow. It is fascinating. I would say that's probably like the biggest thing. I don't know, but I could probably name like 25 other
Right.
things.
Yeah. Hey, you're learning on the way. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Now, you said you see a therapist. I see a therapist, and I
Mhm.
normally cry in my sessions. Do you ever get emotional when you're dealing with somebody else's trauma?
Um, I yes and no, like, and I try to. It's kind of weird as a therapist because there's so many guidelines around like, you don't
Yeah.
want to become like too emotional to the point where it's like they start like comforting you.
Right.
But then there's also this aspect, and I think it's you if you ask any therapist, it's different depending on who you ask. But for me, I feel like you also are a human. So like it's okay to be affected by it. And for me, I kind of shy away from like I wouldn't I would try not to be like crying like full on and being like sobbing, like,
Hmm.
but that's part of that's how I feel about it. Like I feel like my job is to kind of be there and be that strong support for them in that moment, so that, because that's the difference in going to a therapist as opposed to like a family member, right? Because let's say you start talking to a family or friend and they start getting really upset, then you start feeling like, okay, now I need to take care of them and how they're feeling, as opposed to like, wait a second, I'm the one that came in talking about this. So I don't know. For me, I try to kind of hold it together, and then I deal with it after, like I have and that's my way of dealing with it, is I'll kind of hold that space for the person, the client, to talk about stuff and try to, be that good sounding board and that good support for them. And then there's definitely times where after I'm like, I think about it, I'm like, wow, they were just talking about this very like intense thing. And I've had moments, I haven't yet like fully cried in a session, but I've had moments where I've started like tearing up, and I'm like, just because you hear about the pain that people are going through and some of the awful things that have happened to them, and you just feel like, as a therapist, like you have some sense of empathy, like, and you
Right.
start feeling what they're feeling, and it's like it's hard. But I try to, it's a very long-winded answer. I try to keep it together, but I'm sure they can still like see on my face, that I'm very impacted by what they're saying. And I think it would be inhumane to just kind of be the robot who's like
Right.
unaffected,
That goes back to
but
the personality.
yeah, yeah. But I also like want to make sure it's still about them, and holding that, making sure to hold that space for them.
I always wonder when I talk to my therapist if she talks to her therapist about me. You know what I mean? It's like I got this client, he's driving me nuts.
No, I don't know. I think that's what's cool about becoming a therapist is along the way you have like a supervisor who is like your mentor, and you talk to them about different things that clients are talking about, and it's so cool because I don't know, at least for me, I've had a really good experience with supervisors who they just can provide a different perspective. And it's so hard because you think you know what's going on with someone, and sometimes you need to like hear another opinion, or another perspective on what it might be. But that's kind of, I think that's one of the biggest things that they talk about when you become a therapist is making sure to take care of yourself too. And a lot of that is doing your own work, and because that's how we can show up the best for clients, is if we are that solid, and I don't know, that solid presence for them, as opposed to, if I haven't dealt with my own stuff, it's going to show up like in therapy, even with clients. And that's another thing I've learned that's kind of crazy is you think, oh, I've got it, like I'm fine, like nothing's gonna, like trigger me in a certain way. But you'd be surprised, like when clients talk about certain things, you're like, oh, I feel some type of way about this. But yeah.
Along your personal life, your soccer career, and your therapy career, what are you most proud of?
Oh gosh. Um,
All
I
of it.
think I know it's it's so hard. I think I'm most like for me, I'm most proud of what I did after and the transition away from soccer, because that was the hardest for me. I'm very proud of like everything I put into playing, and I don't know. I'm obviously like proud of how far I got, but I think the hardest thing for me, which is like that might sound weird to people, but the hardest thing for me was starting to do something completely different that was like so out of my like identity that I had before. Um, that was the most challenging thing because as I'm sure a lot of athletes will say, like you grow up and that's how people know you. Like you're the athlete, you're the soccer player, and it's so wrapped up in how you look at yourself too and your identity that once, when you stop playing, you're like, wait a second, like who am I now? Like what do I do now? Um and I think I had it a little easier because I always knew I wanted to do something with psychology or mental health. Whereas a lot of players are like, have no idea. And they're like, I have no idea what I want to do outside of soccer. And it's really hard. Um, but for me, that it was so hard to like a funny example is like when I went to my interview, like after I finished or was like almost done with my degree, like the last part of the degree, you have to get like experience with clients in person. And I remember going to my interview and they were looking at my resume and they're like, what? Like, because it was just all the teams I had played for.
Right.
It was like all this experience, like being an athlete. And for me, it was like comical because they're like, have you done anything with mental health? And I was like, nope, sure haven't, but I got this degree and, here we are. Um, but I kind of like, that's an example of like how it just seems like out of left field, because you have so much experience doing this other thing, like countless hours going into being a soccer player, and all of a sudden you're just flipping the switch and starting something brand new, starting all over again. And for me, that was like, that's what I'm proud of, because I'm like, dang, that was really hard for me. And hard because I'm an anxious person too, so every bone in my body was like, don't do it. Let's do something safer. Go do this because go be a coach because you feel more comfortable with that. And that's what, so much of me was like wanting to avoid, but I just kind of trudged through and did it. And I'm like so proud of myself for that because it's hard.
Hey, I just met you and I'm proud of you. I would have went to that interview. When they said that question about mental health, they'd be like, "Well, I know a lot about anxiety because I'm anxious right now."
Yeah, like let me tell you about it.
Like, are you
Yeah.
ready for this one? All right, we're gonna wrap up here, but I wanted to talk about where I am opposed to where you are. You're in California. I'm in Boston. How was it when you came to Boston?
you know, it was like good in some ways, bad in others. And I told you this earlier, but yeah, I like really liked Boston because when I was there, when I went to go play like a game there, um, I had some close friends that live there, so that part was really cool. The downside when I went there is when I tore my ACL, so it doesn't have the best place in my but I know there's potential and there's hope for the future. I just have that kind of
Right.
scar,
Hey,
literally scar. Literally have a scar on my knee from being there.
hey, if you ever need to be a therapist out here, everyone's always looking for one. So if you need to
Yeah.
relocate, we're out here. We'll break the stigma on Boston where it broke
Yeah.
your broke that. And I want to end with this. These two things I like to ask all my guests. So, what would be your personal theme song? So you played soccer. They introduce you. What song would be playing?
You know, I have a song, but I kind of hesitate because it's like I wouldn't say it's a theme song, but it's like my like pump up
Yeah, that works.
gets oh my gosh, gets the juices flowing. It's called Dreams and Nightmares by Meek Mill. Have you heard it?
I don't think so. I'm terrible with
It's
song names, but I like learning these so I can go listen to them.
okay, but it's funny because like you talk to me and you're like, what? And then you're gonna listen to a song and be like, what? Like it's so intense. Like, but that's kind of why I love it. Is it just like it makes you feel once it starts like once it gets going, you're like, dang, I need to like go fight someone, go like
Run through a
do
brick
something,
wall.
go yeah, go run after. I know it sounds funny you say that. That's my like go to. It's yeah. I
Perfect.
can't wait to hear like your reaction.
Yeah, I can't wait either. I'll shoot you an email after and see how it goes.
Yeah,
Um,
it's intense, but I love it.
all right, let's end with this. What are three things that you're grateful for today?
Oh, this is such a good exercise. I even tell my class to do it. It's I try to like do this every day, and I'm smiling because I try to do this every day where I have moments throughout the day where I'm just like, wow, I'm really glad this is happening. I'm really glad this is in my life. I think one of the biggest things that I'm grateful for is I know this is such a cheesy answer, but my daughter because she makes me live in the moment. You know what I mean? Like in the way of you have like you don't have kids, right? I think you
No.
said you don't have kids. It's weird how like they there can be 20 things going on, but like that's the thing about kids is like they need what they need in that moment, and as a parent you're like, okay, I'm the person to give that to you. And what's cool is it makes you forget about everything else and just focus on them. And that's why I'm so grateful for that in so many ways because I take the time to stop and slow down and be like, you know what, let's even if it's something silly, like let's play with these rocks on the ground. Like,
Right.
but then I'm sitting there and I'm just like relaxing and I'm not being anxious about something. So it's super cool. Um, gosh, I could think of so many. I think another thing is I don't know. I think my health. I know I'm saying all the ones that people probably say all the time, but
No, it's good.
that's come up a lot. Just hearing different things about people struggling with stuff, and it just makes you grateful for the thing that we take for granted a lot, you know. And then I would say, I don't know. I think one of the biggest things, like I know you said today, but just in general, that I'm thankful for is all the things that I've gone through, like even the anxiety, like all this stuff, because I've gone to such a good point that I don't know if I could have gotten here without it. You know, like I almost needed to go through a lot of stuff to get on the other side of it. So in a weird way, I'm kind of glad I went through a lot of it.
That's a great three. I like it.
Yeah.
It's a good hat trick. Good hat trick. Um, well, thank you
You
so much.
using the lingo.
I know it. I was researching a little bit. Pro footballer. I know I'm
What
getting better
words
with it.
do?
I'm trying. I'm trying. So where could everyone find you on the internets?
I mean, Twitter, Instagram. I don't go on Twitter very much, but I'll respond.
That's how I found you. I messaged you
I
on Twitter.
know. I know. I mean, I'm like on most platforms. I'm the creepy person who like I do post on Instagram like more
Yeah.
often, but I'm the creepy person who just like watches everyone else's stuff, and like on Twitter I just read everyone else's tweets, but I never say anything, and we could talk about what that means another time. But I would say Instagram. I'm probably the most active. You know.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Stephanie, after talking with you today, you are so very humble. You have a great personality, big heart. I'm so happy for you on your journey becoming a therapist. So you should be definitely
Thank
proud of
you.
that. And you are. And hey, I'm proud of you. Now we're friends.
Yay! Thank you. I appreciate it.
Stephanie Ochs, thank you so much. You have a wonderful day.
Me too.
Round one, fight!
So I do this with all my guests. We play a game of rock, paper, scissors to get things off. I do 2 out of 3. I know you're a competitor, so I'm going to do it on my count. I'll keep my eyes closed so we make this fair. So no cheating.
Okay.
So
Wait, it's rock, paper, scissors, shoot?
yeah, I do rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Okay.
Got it?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'll count it. Rock, paper,
Okay.
scissors, shoot.
No!
Ooh, 1-0. 1-0.
Oh,
All right.
again, the juices flowed. Okay.
Woo! All right. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Ooh, you caught my move. 1-1. Oh man, this is nerve-wracking.
Mind
All right.
games. Mind games.
Yep. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
You
It's
lose!
gotta go rock at least. Oh, talk about the comeback of the century. Oh, jeez.
Oh.
Good game. Good game.
We'll play.
You can kiss my ass!
This podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. If you are feeling suicidal, please dial 911.